Welcome to the I Can podcast, where we discuss all things blindness related, including, but not limited to, technology, issues, and other topics. I hope you enjoy.
The recent pandemic brought home the importance of global accessibility. Over the past few weeks, we've been discussing our experiences during COVID, what we've learned, our takeaways, and our recommendations for the future.
Don't forget, you can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, such as included but not limited to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the latest models of the Victor Reader.
Hi, I'm Brandy Kubel. Careers Plus is designed for young adult and high school students to prepare for high school, middle school, college, and their career of choice. The goal of this podcast is to advocate and educate while fostering a sense of confidence in youth to pursue college and the careers of their choice through interactive, dynamic learning experiences.
My name is Ana Wisma.
I'm Lex Ariola.
Hi, my name is Patricia Figueroa.
My name is Pablo Castro.
My name is Isabella.
My name is Lisa Lloyd.
Hello, my name is Alexander Espejo.
I am Natalie Charles.
So, my name is Aaron Espinoza.
Hi, my name is Rocco.
My name is Logan Barantes.
I'm Charlene.
My name is Randy Owen.
Hi, my name is Anjali. I am the music composer for this podcast.
Please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss any of our uploads. Now, on to our episode.
Since 2011, each year, the third Thursday in May is Global Accessibility Awareness Day.
Someone with a disability must be able to experience web-based services, content, and other digital products with the same successful outcome as those without disabilities. This awareness and commitment to inclusion is the goal of Global Accessibility Awareness Day, GAAD, a global event that shines light on digital access and inclusion for people with disabilities.
To mark GAAD's 10th anniversary, the GAAD Foundation was launched. Its mission is to disrupt the culture of technology and product development, to include accessibility as a core requirement. To learn more about GAAD Foundation, please visit their website at gaad.foundation.
The recent pandemic brought home the importance of global accessibility.
Over the past few weeks, we have been discussing our personal experiences during COVID, what we have learned, our takeaways, and our recommendations for the future. And now, our conversation.
I am Natalie Charles, and in distance learning, I was going to Newark Memorial High School / California School for the Blind, CSB, and I was in the grades junior, so the end of junior year, and senior year. So my experience with distance learning was good and it was bad. I remember that when I found out we were going to go into distance learning, I was the first one to call my teacher and see how I was going to continue school in the high school and doing my schoolwork. And at first it was just schoolwork electronically on a computer using JAWS and then turning it in on Google Classroom without any instruction. And that was until Zoom and Google Meet got set up for everyone. Zoom, I mostly learned Zoom on my own, as well as Google Meet. I figured out how to join the meetings and lead the meetings and stuff like that. However, sometimes I would have bad internet connection, and that would be because on top of me being at home on the computer, on the phone, on Zoom, I would have two others also on their device using the internet in order to get to their classes and be in their classes. But overall, it's a good experience. I think that distance learning has also helped with working, because if you cannot go travel somewhere to work, then you can do it virtually, which is how I am doing it with my other student. I'm using Zoom with her, and I'm doing it over the phone with Anurashma.
Do you think that you learned as much or as well doing distance learning as you did when you were in school in person?
I think so. I think I learned the same, but I feel like in school, while I was doing biology, if I was doing in person, which was for my senior year, I feel like I would have maybe learned more, because I know that there would probably be some more tactile aspects of it that we weren't getting because we were in distance learning. But in general, yeah, I feel like I did learn the same. I mean, in my junior year, I was taking ceramics, and when we switched to distance, ceramics was different because the art teacher had to come up with things for us that we could do at home and kind of send out art materials to those who needed it, and different assignments for us to do with things we had around the house. But in terms of other work, English and math and stuff like that, I was lucky that I didn't have to have math the third year or the fourth year. But if I would have, I don't know how I would have been able to do it in distance. And in terms of English was okay because it was all electronic, and the TVI who was in our class in person was also in our class distance, virtually, along with the CSB students and the teacher who taught the class at Newark.
So I heard you say it really mattered the class that you were in terms of the depth of what you could do and probably how much you could kind of get out of it, it seems. Would you say that's true?
Yes. I mean, I'm saying mostly math I wouldn't have been able to do because math, it would be more harder distantly because I would have to probably do it on the Braille, which I did for when I did take math. And then the teacher would mark my answers, or not really mark them, but put them in a print for the teacher to see, as well as the parts where I had to show my work.
I noted something that you said. You knew JAWS, and so you could access themes because you did know JAWS. And I was thinking about what I had heard during distance learning. A lot of students who were blind or low vision who didn't have as good of a hold on the technology were not able to access their education in the same way as those who did. So I know you were at CFP, and I'm thinking that probably helped play into it.
Yes. I mean, I did start learning more JAWS and computer things when I was in high school, but I kind of started having to use it more in distance learning, especially when it started, because the first maybe 2 weeks or so, because they didn't know how long we would be in it, but those first weeks we didn't really get any instruction. I mean, the only ones who got instruction were the students from CSB. They got instruction if they need help from our classroom teacher with Newark works. But besides that, Newark was mostly for the first 2 weeks of distance learning. There would be only stuff posted electronically on Google Classroom, and then we would do it on Classroom, or there would be things shared with us in Google Drive. We would do it, and then we would just share it back with the teacher. That's basically how it was for the first 2 weeks.
Natalie, did you ever attend Newark High School in person?
Yes, I did. When I was in freshman year, in April was when I started, and then I was there sophomore year and most of junior year until March, because then that's March 13th was when everything shut down, so that was the last day. And then I was there for only my second senior year, which was the year I graduated. So 2021, 2022.
Is there anything about distance learning that you didn't like or was like a challenge?
What I didn't like was when I had bad internet. Like if I was in class at the same time as my siblings, which was sometimes the case, and the internet would glitch out, and then I'd be kicked off. I mean, not kicked off, but like I'd be kicked, like I'd be logged out of the meeting, and then I'd have to try to log back in. Sometimes I was able to, but sometimes I would have to try a lot of times in order for me to get back in. I actually had to have a internet cable plugged into the computer, so then I would be able to kind of get more internet than when I was having it not plugged into the computer, because of my siblings also using the internet. Sometimes at the same time as me, and sometimes I was the only one who had class and they didn't. But most of the time, I think it was all of us using the internet.
And when you say all of us, how many students were there all at the same time?
All of us being all of my siblings, so like 4.
Wow. I would think that would have totally changed your learning experience. Needing 4 people to be on the internet all at the same time, taking breaks at different times. I mean, it could be pretty chaotic, right?
Yes, it was. Technically, though, only like 3, because my brother, he was only in kindergarten, and his classes ended earlier. If I can remember correctly, his classes ended earlier.
It must have been hard to listen sometimes because you'd have a little brother jumping around the place while you're in the middle of class.
Technically, no, because I would be in my room, and my sisters would be, well, one would be in their bedroom, and then the other one would be at the kitchen table or in the living room, and then my brother would be on the counter with my mom supervising, like making sure he's actually doing his work and helping him if he needed help.
Did you have your mom and dad at home then helping?
Well, the first 3 months when everything was in lockdown, yes.
So when you were in school before COVID, you were traveling back and forth to school every day?
Yes, and even after COVID.
So can you compare that to going to classes online? You're not having to spend the travel time. Were there times when you just found yourself going to school in your pajamas? What did you do? Did you have any extra time? And what did you do with it?
Yes. I mean, I did have extra time. I mean, the classes were mostly, like, they ended early, so, like, until, like, 2 o'clock. Sometimes they were later, but mostly, if I remember correctly, some days ended earlier, and so I mostly do schoolwork. As for the morning start times, at first, all of us were in our pajamas, but then as things kind of got started, we all actually had to dress up and everything like we were going to school. So we had to be in regular clothes and have our cameras turned on.
At least you had to wear a shirt that looked like regular clothes, right? The bottoms probably not so much.
No, my clothes I mostly had regular clothes. And we had to have our hair done like as if we were going to school. Like, we couldn't really be in our pajamas and our blankets, because that would mostly happen in the morning part of the day, like when our classes started in the morning.
How did you feel about having your camera on? Because for me, it gave me a lot of anxiety and I just didn't turn it on. Even though like the teachers like encouraged us, it wasn't mandatory. Was it mandatory for y'all? And how did you feel? Did you get anxiety? Did you not mind it?
I I felt okay. I didn't get anxiety. It was mandatory, but I mostly felt okay. I was also going to mention, though, that when we really actually couldn't stay in pajamas and when it was more harder for me and my siblings was when me and my siblings had to go to my aunt's house, who lived like 30 minutes away, because my stepmother, or both of my parents actually, had to work that day.
And I have a question. Do you think that having that camera on and being mindful of it helped you to be more productive?
No. I mean, I've always liked school. And so even when I did have it on, I was always doing my work and listening to the meeting, like listening to the teacher's house. So like how others would probably be like on their phones or looking at the TV. No, I wasn't really doing any of that. I was just listening to the teacher doing my work. And as for like times when we had to do like asynchronous study or asynchronous work, which was mostly after our classes, that was what the rest of the afternoon was for. Like when it kind of got started, more set up, I would always do my work.
What was your favorite class and why?
That's a hard one because I liked everything about school, even in person. But I guess I would have to say homeroom and ceramics when I did take ceramics. Because ceramics, it was cool to see like what activities she was going to plan for us to do. And also homeroom, because homeroom we mostly like did work. Or it was actually in the morning, so my teacher Kate put in like shows, well, not shows, but like educational channels. Like she used to make us watch CNN 10 a lot.
I was curious if any of those videos that you watched were audio described.
No, you could just hear it. You could hear it and like know what they were talking about, but no, it's not audio described.
How do you feel when you first go back to school after distance learning now, right?
When we first got back in person, I was so happy and I was so excited because when distance learning started and we found out the school was going to be closed for the rest of the school year, I was devastated. And when we didn't know how long it would be closed for, I was even more upset. But I didn't let that bother me. I still did my studies. And when they actually started having students go back to CSC in our senior year, like in March or April, they didn't let us because that would be too much of a transition change. And it was only the day students. And it was only like for a couple hours a day that they were letting them come back. But when they started letting students do that, I was actually not happy because I wanted to go back. But the teacher did say that if it didn't work, then that we would all be back next year, which was my second senior year, which thank goodness we were able to do that. Because if I actually had to stay in virtual my second senior year and graduate like that, I would be really sad, more sadder than I already was. Which I know that there was 2 graduations where they had to be virtual and the students didn't return to the school because it was virtual.
Well, when I first started learning, I know the braille touch device, right, Mama?
That's true. You didn't know the braille note touch device.
And so I have to call Miss Power on Saturday mornings to tell her how the braille touch to tell all of us, right, Mama?
So we had to call her TVI teacher even on a Saturday morning because we'd get stuck and we weren't able to do any more work. And we were constantly getting stuck. And how did that make you feel?
Upset and I wasted my time even. Remember that?
Yeah, it was hard because time-wise, we just couldn't get through the material fast enough. We just kept getting stopped because we didn't know how to help Anurishma with the braille note touch. Mm-hmm. She didn't know the device very well. And so we ended up in tears. Sometimes both of us were in tears. And there was a lot of that, wasn't there?
And then after that, Mr. J would say, I had to just learn on Mom and Dad's bed the first day. And then out in a dining hall, remember that? Why, Mama? I'm in with that.
So your teacher at the time, he was a great guy. He was this special day class teacher. And we liked him a lot. And he kept it pretty exciting for the students. He was so upbeat and so energetic. And he was just lovely. But I think it got much harder in the next year because you were in mainstream classes more. And it was a little bit less relevant. A lot of the things that were talked about on the screen, like as Natalie was saying, there was no like tactile things to touch unless we made a special request, and we kept requesting things. And then we ended up asking for American Printing House for the Blind materials to be ordered from their website so that we could try and have the education be more relevant to Ana Reshma's experience.
And then one time I worked the Braille Touch, and then I had to borrow the Lono Braille Touch from him.
Yeah, the Braille Touch broke, and then we had to get a different one, which she was even less familiar with. So we definitely had our struggles. But there was one part that your dad was really excited about, and it involved being on our back picnic table. Do you remember what that was?
No.
What was brought home from the science department?
A frog.
A real live frog. And what did you do to that frog?
Just dissected.
You dissected it.
And mine was in the kitchen making pizza.
He was making pizza in the kitchen and in the backyard with Gordon, all excited about the science. And Ana Reshma had gloves on. And what were you doing?
My dad had to cut frog for me.
He had to cut up the frog, and then he'd hand you the frog parts. And so Ana Reshma would...
Yes. And then Mr. Cole went out, and my dad had to be a substitute.
Oh, that was funny. And then the teacher, he had something wrong with his internet, so he couldn't lead the class. And Gordon was like, I'll do it. He got so into it. He almost took over the teacher's science class. There was some fun parts. There was some really challenging parts. It was very memorable.
Oh, then my dad had meetings. Mommy had to be substitute.
Well, I was a substitute. Like, we didn't have an instructional assistant who was present during almost all of distance learning. So my husband and I became the instructional assistant. He did most of it, and his mom and dad were teachers, and Gordon's really strong with math and science. But when it came to language arts, then I stepped in. And then when Gordon needed a break, I was the substitute instructional assistant.
So my dad had some lesson plans for you.
So so I had to we had to work really closely. And then the other thing that we had going on in our house was we had Anju living with us, and she was a 6th grade teacher, and our girls were in 7th grade. And so she was really familiar with a lot of the material. So when we get stopped, we would go and ask her and say, well, we're trying to teach Ana Reshma this. How would you teach it? And so we became like this little learning community. We had Anjali at home. She was in 7th grade as well, in the same grade as Ana Reshma. And then we had the 6th grade teacher here. And then, mom and dad, Gordon and I. So it was really a learning community for that duration of time. And I kind of enjoyed that, to be honest.
There's one time if you're out, so Andrew had to be on my phone calls.
Yeah, there was a time where both I was busy and Gordon was busy. And then Anji had to jump in and help. And she was really good with the technology, and she understood Google Classroom really well. So she could jump in and understood parts that I didn't understand because I just wasn't familiar.
So Andrew had put one earbud in from my whole phone call, one earbud from my phone call, right?
We took turns. We were a team. I thought that part of it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Lisa, can I ask a question? You've mentioned several times you guys were using a Braille Note Touch. And a Braille Note Touch is actually an Android tablet, correct? And so there's a visual aspect to it. Did you find that being advantageous? Did it help you follow along with the work that Ana Reshma was doing?
It was, but here was the challenging part, Randy. It had no email access and no internet access. It was such an old device that the school district had given her. So there was very little capacity. And so she also had an iPad, but then they never taught her voiceover. So she couldn't access anything on the iPad in terms of Google Classroom. She had to have her instructional assistant do that part of it. So that was what was hard. It was very disempowering, I think, for her, because she had to have someone else along with her to make it accessible. And then that was like a real eye-opener for us. As parents, we were like, well, then what the heck is happening in school? Well, her instructional assistant at school is operating the iPad for her, and nobody in the school district even knows voiceover to teach it to her. And so she had to take a short course at CSB. And then that was like, wow, She should have learned this years ago. She got this iPad given to her in like 3rd grade, 4th grade, but she was never able to access it herself. So I think that was one of the things that we learned, was that distance learning unveiled how inaccessible her education was to her.
What was distance learning like for you, and where did it start?
Okay, so it was weird. So the first time we heard about like the whole lockdown thing, it was when a district nearby had closed their schools for like 2 weeks. And we were all excited. I was excited. I remember going to the store with my friend and we're like, we're going to go buy snacks because we're not going to be in school for a few days. Because in our mind, school was going to close for a few days because they were going to sanitize and then we were going to go back. But as we know, it didn't exactly happen. And so a few days, like they kind of extended the sanitization? Is that even a word? Sanitization of the school. And they're like, we're opening in May. Okay, so now what are we gonna do? And the teacher was like, we're gonna have some asynchronous assignments or whatever. It was just like a whole bunch of, what is it called? Improvised types of stuff. And then that was my sophomore year. And in my junior year, honestly, distance learning was good.
So for me, it was a little bit of both, because it started when I was leaving high school, and then I began college with distance learning. So it was just getting adjusted to that new environment. Like trying to go through college is normally difficult, but having to do that all online is even more so. I definitely think that it was, while there was like that support network, being able to go to someone physically with a problem and have it answered that day instead of having to wait like a day or two for someone to get back to you via email, it makes all the difference. So for me, it was a mixed bag, really.
What I liked about your answer is that you have both perspectives of still being in high school and going through part of it, and then being in college. That's pretty unique.
Yeah, and as I said, last time that we met for my high school, they had a grade pause because they initially thought it would be, not a grade pause, but like your grade couldn't dip below a certain percentage. So for the rest of the year, it was, you couldn't get like below a C or a D during that time in high school. But then in college, it was your grade is your grade, even though we're online, because we have a better handle on it. So I had, when it came to distance learning, especially at college, it was, as I said, that adjustment period. So I had, I still do it now, where it was like basically 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. just solid work. Because I was figuring it out, trying to make sure I got everything in correctly and on time. So I didn't have too much extra time on my hands. I just had to figure out a way to better allocate what time I had. Definitely, as I've gone through, I have been a little better at managing, because the biggest thing for me is when to stop working, to just take a breather, get up, go get something to eat, go, just take a stretch. So it's definitely like with the asynchronous, like that's not scheduled really. It's you do the work when you can to get it done by Friday or Sunday. it's really, you have to not necessarily police yourself, but you have to understand how you operate and figure out when you can squeeze those breaks in and when they'd be best for you.
Working remotely, did you find yourself having challenges with self-discipline?
I'm not going to say I was perfect. There were definitely times where it's like my attention wandered, especially in my earlier morning classes. But it's trying to stay focused and attentive. What was also a challenge in the fact like I was taking notes as well, and thankfully now it's a little bit easier with some of the classes I have. They have pre-recorded lectures instead of live Zoom lectures. So if I have missed something, I can go back and I can update my notes, make sure I have the information if I missed something. But yeah, I usually try to stay on task, but there is that occasion where it's like I'll lose focus and I'll have to like get back on track.
How do you think you do things differently based on doing distance learning during COVID?
If I understand this question correctly, my general day-to-day was different. I mean, it was mostly just me in my pajamas all day. And it was I wouldn't say it was easier, because it did present its own challenges, but it was definitely I wasn't like anxious to get out the door and get somewhere on time. I felt I had enough time to really get prepared for my class. Make sure I had something to eat before. If it was, morning class, make sure I had all my notes together, stuff like that. It just felt like a little more of a relaxed experience. Just being at home, having like my own, having a little bit of a space to, figure out how to pace myself, I guess, if that makes sense. Now I myself am still doing online classes, but that's definitely something I think I could take with me out of that, if that makes sense. Not the pajama wearing part, but the just making sure you have a better handle, making sure I have a better handle on my schedule, so I can have those notes ready for the next class, get all my thoughts together, have a basic understanding of what we're going to be doing. So if I have if there's any material in advance, I can go over it and then have my questions prepared.
Has your experience with in-person and distance learning broadened your perspective or your prospects when looking at a 4-year college? Do you think that you would consider a full online curriculum for a 4-year university?
That's a really good question. I would say for me, definitely during this process, I've kind of flip-flopped when it comes to college. Going in, it was to go into the community and transfer, and then there were some rough patches where I was like, I'll just finish this, or I'll even stop, I'll drop it. But then now it's with a clearer head. It's definitely something I think I would prefer, especially a 4-year, as it's a little. It's not that there's not a support system there, but it's a lot more do-it-yourself. Community college is still a support system there, through different departments. So I would prefer more hybridized kind of when it would come to a 4-year, so I can still go in to get help when I need it. Kind of trying to get the best of both worlds.
What services were you able to utilize for your distance learning time period versus now? Like, was there certain campus services that you utilized?
During the pandemic, stay at home, I was able to still have the I guess you call them, like an online one-on-one with my counselor to go over like different accessibility training, for JAWS and things like that. The service I really have been able to use now more that campus has opened up is the what they call the STEM center, so I can actually physically go in, and if I have a problem with a particular assignment, I can get assistance getting that done. They also have although no, they did that during stay at home, is you can loan, like I could borrow equipment, like last year when my laptop broke down for a couple weeks and I needed to get it sent off. I was able to borrow a laptop from there. But there hasn't been much change is what I'm trying to say.
My name's Isabella, and I'm currently 15. I'm in the 9th grade, and I live in Danville, which is pretty far from you, considering it's more near it's about an hour away from San Francisco.
How was school like for you before distance learning?
So school for me, I actually really enjoyed school. So I remember I would always, like in elementary, I would always avoid, even if I was sick. I know a lot of people would use that as an excuse to say, no, I don't want to go to school. I, on the other hand, would basically force my parents to bring me to school. I rarely got very, very sick, so that was also a good thing. And for me, before distance learning, it was really, I feel like it was a repeated process that slowly kind of got engraved into my head because, you did it every year. So I think there were a lot of fun memories in each year for sure.
What do you like about distance learning? And if anything, what don't you like about virtual learning?
So virtual learning for me, I know one of the good parts was that, number one, the commute for sure. You don't have to commute to your school. So this is just talking about me here. Totally. If class started at 8, I would wake up at 7:50. So, that was me. And other than that, I feel like virtual learning actually, I really noticed how hard the teachers worked because I remember in 6th grade, near the end of the semester where COVID started for me, I was in the 6th grade, and I remember the end of 6th grade was kind of just, kind of at a weird standstill because basically I would say the last day of school was like the day before everything went online. For me, the few months after that involved 6th grade was just kind of weird. Like there wasn't any assignments for some of the classes. Everybody was kind of just getting used to it. There wasn't any meetings and stuff. But I do remember that in 7th grade, everything looked a lot more, organized. And I really noticed how everything changed from, random meetings here and there to meetings as in for every class, and everything was very neat and orderly, I would say. For the bad parts of virtual learning, I would say number one, being able to talk to your friends and actually making friends. I do remember that luckily I actually got a phone when I was in sixth grade. So I actually got to, before COVID hit everybody, I got to all my, friends' phone numbers and stuff. So we always texted. But making friends was definitely hard because all you did was go onto that Zoom meeting or Google Meet meeting and have class. And you didn't really have conversations with anybody. If you did, it would always be like, school related or like project based related, stuff like that. So I like how, for me, the education I received, the teachers were for me, I do know that since I was the only one who was very visually impaired to the point where I kind of needed help on a few things, and for every class there was only me in that, I guess in that class where I really got to get to know my teacher because they had to help me a lot. So the nice thing about having that was the education I received. I know everybody received the same education while the teacher's class, but I feel like a huge part of education is actually to kind of your social skills. So I really got to know the teachers as well as my different classmates. As the only person who was in that classroom who was visually impaired, I feel like in a way I would sometimes feel like I wanted to kind of blend in with that group because I would always kind of, I guess in a way I kind of like put myself down. The visual impaired part of me kind of wanted to hide that aspect of me. And so basically I didn't want to be different in a way. So I guess that doesn't really relate to the education, but I would say a bad part of it was definitely for the visual impaired part of me going to a public school sometimes, and I guess a school who wasn't really catered to this type of student. I would say that definitely affected me, and especially another part of that was I actually when I was younger, I guess in elementary, a huge part of it was due to bullying. So a lot of the times it was focused on the visually impaired aspect of me. I've gotten over it now, but it was definitely a huge part of school where I, due to my past experiences, I would always try to suppress that part of me. But yeah, I mean, it's not really a part of education, but it's still a part of school. So, yeah.
Do you ever wish you attended an in-person school instead of an online school?
I would say it's a half and half. I think a good part of online school is that you really focus on school. I'm very academically driven, so I tend to really put a huge part of my day is to focus on school and studying. And with the commuting time and stuff, it's really nice to just use that time to do other things that I like to do, or like some sort of extracurriculars and stuff. I think in-person school, the good aspect of that online school doesn't have is the ability to make friends really easily. And basically a friend is everywhere, I would say. Because online school is online, you don't really take the time to get to know your classmates in depth. I would say, in person, the person you sit next to, maybe you can talk to them when the teacher is, not here yet for during the class, or when you're waiting outside for the teacher to let you in. You maybe, you get to know the people around you. But online school isn't like that. So all you really do is log on to the class. You take the class, you say goodbye to everybody, and then you get off the class, and then you probably repeat that process for the other classes. So I think in-person school, there are good and bad parts for both an online and in-person school. It's just like how you're going to try to fix the problems that occur for whichever school you decide to attend.
Do you have friends who are in regular school? And if so, where do you see them? like, I know you say that you talk to them like on the phone, but like, do you see them anywhere, or like, do you hang out with them anywhere else?
Yeah. So the thing is, so for me, I have a few friends from middle school, and they currently attend a public high school in person. And so we usually meet about every month, I would say. I text regularly with one of them, but I would say we usually try to meet up kind of every month or so, and to kind of like catch each other up, or like talk about gossip or whatever, right? Stuff like that. It's what girls do basically when they meet up. And other than that, yeah. But the good thing about my new online school is that they really try to focus on getting the students together. So there's a lot of meet and greets. There's a lot of like hangout times where you can, hang out with the people around your area. For example, I did meet a person who lived, I guess, like I would say, like, not in my area, but about like 40-minute drive away. Of course, we haven't really met in person, but I do text her a lot. So I feel like a huge part of getting to know friends and I guess, keeping in contact with them is definitely a lot of technology and a lot of messages.
Do you think there is any advantages to doing school the way you do school?
The advantages for me, as I said before, is you don't need the commute time. So you can use that time to do whatever else you want to do. I usually do that because nowadays it's mostly, I don't need to plan that time for commuting. And usually, like, the nearest public school to me is or public high school, or basically a school in general, is about a 30-minute drive without traffic. So using that time, especially since, it basically takes an hour out of your day without traffic to, commute time. Another advantage I would say is that you really focus on your studies. You really focus on yourself, I would say. It's not, you get extra time to kind of find the interests that you want to do. And a lot of the, like for me, I know I do a lot of extracurricular activities, and without that hour, I would probably have to stop one of them because I don't have enough time to continue that interest.
What would you say to someone who is thinking about converting to this kind of school you go to?
So, yes, what I would say to that person was, number one, you definitely have to have self-discipline. Going to an online school is hard, where you can't really control your, I guess, I want to say urges. Yeah, I guess urges, as in like, going on your phone during class, or cheating on tests and stuff because it's online. Stuff like that. Of course, there are, policies and stuff involved where you can't do that. So, yeah, if you don't have enough self-discipline to actually try to focus on your school career, then yeah, probably not a good school for you. Another thing is, if you want to actually go to a online school, for like the school I'm attending right now is private. So like me, if you went to a completely public school for the whole part of, like, until 8th grade, for me it was until 8th grade, the transition is going to be hard. For sure. It's going to be hard. I totally understand, because as I said before, I'm very academically driven. So I would always pride myself in getting all A's, very high grades. And when I got my first B, for example, in last semester, I had a lot of, the first semester is definitely hard. The transition, I thought was going to be easy, but surprise, it's not. It's you have to, even if it's just you transition from a middle to a high school, it's going to be a pretty big transition because number one, you are going to a bigger campus and, it might be harder to navigate. Maybe you have more classes, maybe they're more advanced. For example, the school I go to, a lot of the classes are advanced. So you really have to focus on your academics if you really want to go to the school.
What have you learned about yourself through this journey?
For me, I would say, really, I don't really see so looking at me myself, I would say I don't really see a huge change. That's probably just me, because, you kind of change very slow. I think you change pretty slowly. The change is probably not noticeable to me, but I can say probably a lot of my family members and people around me have said I've changed for the better. Like, for example, I do know that I really focused on kind of making, I think a schedule really helps with, I know I used to always pride myself and being able to memorize what I had to do for the whole day. I think, sitting down, giving 10 minutes to yourself to actually create a schedule for the next day is very helpful because you get to really see what you have to do and you don't really feel rushed. You kind of know when to start, when to stop, when to give yourself breaks and stuff. Another thing is I really focused on my, mental health now. I do know that as the eldest of my family, I really, have to set a good example for my siblings. So now after this journey, I feel like, I really started to kind of focus on, this part of me. I'm kind of just a lot of times I tend to not speak up when when there is conflict. So I've noticed that, now I've started to speak up, which is nice. So I've kind of gotten out of that shell of me.
I've learned that I've learned that I want to word this in sort of a positive way. But I kind of overdo things. I overextenuate myself. Like I said, especially starting out, even now to an extent, going from dawn to dusk, really working with not too much break in between. So it's definitely, learning more of what I'm capable of and when to push myself and when to hold back a bit and take it slower. Another thing is more so time management. So instead of trying to get everything done all at once, it's doing a little bit of this assignment today, maybe doing a little bit of another assignment that day, and then, just pacing different things throughout the week so it's a little more structured and I'm not having, I'm not panicking as much. I have a solid game plan and more just trying to get myself a little more organized. And that is still a process that I'm going through, but it's definitely something I feel like I'm improving in.
As a mom of a child that's blind, my social circle significantly expanded during COVID. So much so that it kind of blew my mind. I was excited about the online communities that I became a part of, and I felt more connected with other parents of children who are blind throughout the whole United States and all of the services that support us. I never would have expected that COVID would have allowed me to feel that way, but it did.
Yeah, my working network grew quite a bit over COVID. Colleagues that I met doing virtual networking and workshops and webinars. And so just in the blindness rehabilitation profession, my network grew exponentially over COVID.
I was able to gain access to support groups for parents, webinars, Zoom meetings on a whole new level. Me being visually impaired did not stop me from being able to attend and participate. It allowed me access in a brand new way, in a way that I never experienced before. So I think for me, it was a huge blessing. And I know a lot of the people felt disconnected during COVID. I felt more connected. I almost feel like it was conversely different than what the teenagers were feeling. I think the teenagers were feeling an extreme isolation, whereas I was feeling an extreme connectedness in a whole brand new way.
I learned COVID. My experience with COVID was a lot. With the COVID lockdown was a lot like Lisa's. It was a blessing in multiple ways. It helped me to rise to the challenge of creative thinking outside of the box and new ways of approaching teaching and methods of teaching. It challenged me as an instructor, as a service provider. It definitely rose to the challenge of time management and multitasking with a kid in school and a husband in school and a cat meowing and sitting on my keyboard. And, but it was a blessing too, because I was able to focus. I didn't have to worry about commuting. Believe it or not, that takes a lot of time out of your day. So there was a lot of silver linings there. And I think I came back actually a stronger, better performer and a better worker, a better teacher.
We close this episode with these hashtags.
Hashtag self-discipline.
Hashtag Global Accessibility Awareness Day.
Hashtag online learning.
Hashtag A11Y.
Hashtag self-improvement.
Hashtag overcoming challenges.
Hashtag that's how to fuck.
Hashtag oh my goodness, teachers are not paid enough.
Hashtag thank you parent participation.
Hashtag Society for the Fair.
If you would like more information, please visit the Careers Plus page at societyfortheblind.org. You can also email us at icanpod@societyfortheblind.org. That's EYECANPOD @societyfortheblind.org.
Thank you for listening. Bye bye, everybody.